Sammy was considered a less attractive and unintelligent child from a young age. Compared to her siblings, she was different and considered the black sheep of the family. Her siblings were considered more beautiful and smart. Sammy stood out like a sore thumb. She was completely different. To make matters worse, she had a huge appetite and was always eating large quantities of food. One day during class, Sammy's teacher Mrs. Oge asked those who hadn't done their assignment to stand up. Only Sammy and Hadaku stood up. Mrs. Oge looked at them disapprovingly and said in front of everyone, "Both of you can't make anything good out of your life. All you do is sleep during lectures and never do your assignments. The only thing you seem good at is stuffing your face with food all day. Useless bunch, FFO for food." Only the whole class burst out laughing and mocked them ruthlessly. However, Sammy was an exceptionally carefree student. She truly believed she had a special talent for eating that no one could ever compete with. Hadaku was Sammy's best friend. They were birds of a feather. They became fast friends after their teacher punished them both for sleeping in class one day by making them kneel outside the classroom. As they knelt side by side, Hadaku pulled out a bag of roasted groundnuts and roasted plantains from her pocket and offered to share her snacks with Sammy. The delicious aroma of the roasted plantains wafted through the air, catching the attention of Mrs. Oge. She angrily confiscated their food and had them sent to the principal's office for further disciplinary action. The principal sternly told them they both seemed to have some kind of eating disorder and recommended therapy and counseling. The girls only shouted in unison, "Disorder quoi?" and laughed at the principal, who had to send for their parents. The whole school mocked them, but Sammy and Hadaku didn't mind the mockery or punishment one bit. They simply loved food too much to care what others thought. Sammy's father would get gifts for Sammy's siblings for doing well academically. He would often ask what they wanted him to get and the children would make a list. But Sammy was simply unbothered by this, as she would sit and eat to her satisfaction whenever they did this. Her father would punish her and call her names, but she was simply unbothered. Sammy was also a chronic bedwetter after overeating. She would routinely wake up in the middle of the night with intense cravings and have to get out of bed to find something to satisfy her rumbling tummy. One night, Sammy's elder sister Eva witnessed her walking into the kitchen in a daze. Eva followed and watched in horror as Sammy retrieved a loaf of bread, tore it open with her hands, and began devouring it piece by piece right there while standing in the middle of the kitchen floor. Bread crumbs and smears of mayonnaise were getting everywhere. Fed up, Eva rushed over and slapped Sammy hard across the face. She scolded Sammy for being such a disgusting and inconsiderate slob, eating like an animal in the middle of the night and making a huge mess. Sammy wasn't even bothered, rather she shouted at her sister to leave her alone. Then took the bread and a drink and walked majestically back to her room. Leaving Eva was so speechless. As the children got older, their differences became even more pronounced. While Eva and the other siblings went on to universities after secondary school, Sammy decided to pursue a vocational career by attending a tailoring apprenticeship program. But even there, her passion for food got in the way of her training. After spending years as a tailor's apprentice, Sammy still struggled with even the most basic alterations and repairs. At one point, her brother gave her a pair of his torn trousers to mend. But Sammy ended up making them overly tight and short, essentially ruining them. Her brother shouted angrily, "When are you going to learn? You've been at this for 3 years and you still can't do the most basic things right." Sammy's parents tried everything to help her find direction and purpose in life beyond just eating all the time. But despite their efforts, nothing seemed to work or have any impact on changing Sammy's lazy habits and obsession with food. They had seemingly exhausted all options to try and put her on a better path. Finally, Sammy's parents decided to send her away to live with her widowed aunt who lived in another city. They hoped a change in environment might change her. Besides, they also thought getting Sammy away from her enabling friend Hadaku could help straighten her out. Sammy was deeply unhappy about having to leave her parents and best friend, but she didn't have a choice. When Sammy arrived, her aunt greeted her with open arms. She was overjoyed to have her niece coming to stay with her. However, Sammy's habits and behavior remained firmly rooted in her love of food. She continued bedwetting and sleepwalking. One morning, after another incident where Sammy had eaten all the food in the house and left crumbs and stains all over the kitchen, her aunt finally sat her down for a serious talk. "Sammy, what do you want out of life? What are your goals and ambitions?" Sammy just smiled sweetly and replied, "Food. I want lots of delicious food. I wish to win a big eating competition and win lots of money." Her aunt couldn't help but laugh. "Yes, I know you love eating, dear. But surely there must be more to life than just eating all day. Don't you want to learn some skills or find a productive hobby?" Sammy thought for a moment before shaking her head and responding no. At this point in her life, food was her entire world. She didn't have any higher ambitions beyond satisfying her endless cravings and appetite. Seeing that Sammy was completely unmotivated, her aunt decided to take matters into her own hands. The very next morning, she woke Sammy up before dawn and announced they were going on a surprise field trip. Still half asleep and confused, Sammy didn't object as her aunt drove across town. It was only after they arrived at their mysterious destination that Sammy realized her aunt had enrolled her in a culinary professional course at the most prestigious cooking school in the city. Sammy's aunt had also gone ahead and signed her up for physical fitness classes at a gym right next door to the school. At first, Sammy was completely uninterested in the culinary lectures and kitchen demonstrations. She didn't care at all about learning cooking techniques or food preparation. The only thing that captured her attention was when the class got to sample the dishes they had prepared at the end of the class. She smiled and said at least the day wasn't wasted. While the portions were small, Sammy savored every single bite, delighted by the beautiful flavors and spices. Slowly but surely, Sammy started paying closer attention in her cooking classes, taking careful notes, and studying hard. She discovered a whole new world of international cuisines and cooking methods she had never experienced before. Sammy began practicing what she learned at home, experimenting with spices and coming up with her own delicious creations. She found that she had a natural talent for blending spices and seasonings in unique ways. With each passing week, Sammy's culinary skills and confidence in the kitchen grew immensely. For the first time, Sammy felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment beyond just mindless binge eating. Preparing delicious meals from scratch gave her a creative outlet to channel her longtime love of food into an art form. Sammy also benefited tremendously from the physical fitness classes, losing weight and developing a more healthy lifestyle. She started sleeping through the night instead of waking up to raid the kitchen. Her late-night binges, bedwetting, and sleepwalking gradually became things of the past as she got her uncontrolled appetites under control. One day Sammy called her aunt and thanked her immensely. She cried and told her she used the love of food to cover her fear and inadequacies. She said that she felt useless and incredibly unloved and neglected, but the only place she found love and comfort was eating. Her aunt told her she was beautiful and loved and could achieve anything she wanted, though they hugged themselves tight. One day, Sammy was so overjoyed by all the positive changes in her life that she sat down to write a long letter to her old best friend Hadaku, who was still back in their hometown. Sammy gushed about how rich she was, and how she had helped open her eyes to the wider world of culinary arts. She reassured her that there was so much more to food than she knew. It could be an identity, a career, and an artistic passion. Sammy encouraged her friend to get out of their small town and come join her in the city, saying Hadaku's sister lived in the same area so she would have a place to stay. Sammy wrote that they could finally start living their lives to the fullest and rediscover their shared love of food through a new lens of culinary expertise. When Hadaku received Sammy's heartfelt letter and proposal, she was instantly convinced to take a chance and turn over an exciting new leaf. Like Sammy, Adaku was also dissatisfied with her stagnant life path and constantly nagging from her parents. The prospect of reuniting with her old friend and doing something productive with their love of food was too good to pass up. Within a couple weeks, Adaku moved to the city to live with her sister's family. Her sister was hesitant about the idea at first, worried that Adaku would just continue being a lazy freeloader. But she gave in after Sammy promised her they were going to change and take the culinary career path seriously. Adaku threw herself fully into her culinary education, attending the same cooking school as Sammy. At first it was a major struggle as she had to overcome years of ingrained lazy habits, but with Sammy's constant support and friendly encouragement, she was eventually able to get on track. The two friends became inseparable study partners. They spent countless hours together practicing recipes, analyzing different flavor profiles, and quizzing each other to reinforce the curriculum. As the years progressed through their culinary school programs, Sammy and Adaku displayed incredible growth not just in their cooking abilities, but also their overall maturity. Their hard work and commitment paid off when they both graduated as the top students of their class, earning high honors. Their excellence was rewarded with full scholarships to continue their studies at one of the most prestigious culinary institutes in Turkey. Sammy and Adaku had gone from two friends with unhealthy eating habits to internationally recognized cooking prodigies. Ecstatic with pride, their families threw a big celebratory going-away party. Sammy's parents could barely contain their astonishment and joy at the incredible turnaround their daughter had made. Her father gave a touching toast, admitting through tears that he had once lost all hope that Sammy would ever amount to anything. But she had proven everyone wrong through her amazing focus and work ethic. Adaku's sister and parents were equally overcome with emotions at witnessing their formerly underachieving Adaku blossom into a world-class chef on the rise. After spending a couple of years in Turkey, further honing their skills and learning regional Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines, Sammy and Adaku returned to Nigeria as master chefs. However, their journey was far from over. The two had an even bigger dream to pursue. Pooling their life savings along with financial support from their families, Sammy and Adaku set out to open their own high-end restaurant in one of the trendiest neighborhoods in the city. They wanted to create a unique dining experience that blended countless cultural flavors. When they finally opened the doors of their new establishment named Fusion, after over a year of preparations, food critics praised the adventurous flavors and incredible craft on display. Wealthy socialites and celebrities flocked to Fusion, making it an exclusive hotspot. The restaurant kept racking up prestigious awards and accolades, including being named one of the best eateries in Africa. Sammy and Adaku started making plans to open additional restaurants in other major cities. Their dreams showed no signs of stopping as they rode their inspiring culinary rags to riches story to unlimited possibilities. Of course, none of their amazing achievements would have been possible without the pivotal life-changing moment when Sammy's aunt pushed her to apply her love of eating towards more productive ambitions. Several years after opening Fusion, Sammy and Adaku received a shocking invitation. Their school had invited them to be special guests at the school's anniversary/prize giving day. When they arrived, they were greeted by cheering crowds of students and staff/alumni. The press was there to cover the event. Many of the same people who had bullied and mocked the two friends for their obsession with food were now celebrating their incredible success. As Sammy and Adaku made their way inside the school auditorium, they saw their names and photos displayed prominently on stage alongside an impressive listing of their many culinary accomplishments and awards. The principal gave an opening speech commemorating how they had overcome incredible adversity and long odds to revolutionize the food industry. After the lavish ceremony, Sammy and Adaku were given a chance to address the audience and share some words of wisdom and life lessons. Adaku went first, admitting that as a young student, she could never have imagined the remarkable journey that lay ahead. If you had told me and Sammy back then that our complicated relationships with food would one day lead to global culinary fame and fortune, we would have never believed it. Had we stayed stuck in our ways, we would have completely missed out on discovering our true callings in life. Always keep an open mind, embrace change, and have the courage to explore new opportunities that could turn your perceived weaknesses into unexpected strengths. After a standing ovation, it was Sammy's turn to take the mic. She reminisced fondly about her childhood adventures and mishaps with Hadaku, able to chuckle at the many embarrassing memories. But she grew somber when recalling the deep sadness she used to feel from the merciless bullying and rejection they both endured for being different. But she chose never to show her weakness and pains, so she closed her ears to whatever was said to her by being numb and unbothered. I never forget the profound hurt of having teachers, students, even own families tell us that we were simply hopeless lost causes who would never amount to anything. Those hurtful words and terrible feelings stuck with me for many years, preventing me from having any real self-confidence or motivation to explore my true potential. Sammy continued, if not for my aunt's unconventional, tough love tactics of forcing me to train as a chef, I may have never escaped that inescapable cycle of self-loathing and destructive habits. Her voice cracking with emotion, Sammy stressed the moral lesson. The people in your life who love you are not always going to make decisions that you agree with at first. Sometimes it takes a rude awakening from an outside force to shake you up and motivate you to create lasting change. Don't resent it or take it personally. Have an open heart to receive that nudge in a better direction if you find yourself going down the wrong path. The crowd was gripped by Sammy's vulnerable openness as she drove home her final point. Most importantly though, never lose faith in yourself. Both Sammy and Hadaku received multiple standing ovations from the very people who had once ridiculed them. Many were overtaken with emotion, shedding tears of joy and regret for how they had treated the two culinary visionaries in their youth. At first, Mrs. Oge was apprehensive about reuniting with her former students, feeling immense guilt and shame over how cruelly she had written them off as hopeless underachievers. She tried avoiding them, remembering the harsh insults she had flung their way about never amounting to anything in life. But when they saw her, they ran to hug her. The two friends showed nothing but warm smiles and greeted Mrs. Oge. Why would you want to see me after everything I put you both through? Mrs. Oge asked, struggling to hold back tears. The horrible things I said, how I constantly punished and belittled you in front of the other students, it was unforgivable. I was a terrible teacher who gave up on you when I should have been trying to nurture your obvious interests and talents. What is past, Sammy reassured her. Mrs. Oge said, if I could go back and change just one thing, I would have looked past the silliness of your childhood antics and nurtured you. Sammy and Hadaku simply smiled and reassured their old teacher that everything had happened for a reason, and there were no regrets, only an incredibly bright future filled with more sweetness than they could have ever imagined.